Let's start all way back from jockeying, how to defend on FIFA as the game, and the best way recommended is to jockey. Here you can react to every single change of direction the opponent's player does. Before we continue, let's see the difference of not using the jockey system to defend. When you move normally while controlling your defender, he will move with his body shape straight, he will not change direction easily, and the player will change his body and turn his back towards the ball. If you move away from the ball, defending like this is very bad, because it's difficult to react to the opponent's change of directions. We have two defending styles on FIFA as the game, and one of them is the legacy defending. If you want to learn more about manual jockeying, and the assisted one, check the video link in the description. So what is legacy defending? Here you use the contain button a lot of the times to press the opponent's player. Take a look at this defender with the cursor. If you hold X, the contain button, he will start running automatically towards the ball holder. He will be locked to him until you release it, and if you hold it again, he will lock to the ball holder again, running towards him. Even if you try changing directions with the left analog, he will continue to his target, and if you keep on holding the button, he will approach the ball holder and tackle the ball automatically. Though this type of defending is automatic, but it's not recommended to be used, and it can only be used in the offline modes. But if you're the type of a player who play online modes like FUT, and I think it's the majority, it's by default to use the next defending style, the tactical defending. Online you cannot change it to legacy, only tactical defending is allowed. So what's tactical defending? In brief, this is the manual defending style. By examples, if you hold the contain button X, your defender will move towards the opponent's player. He will position himself in front of him, but he will not be aggressive as when you're using the legacy defending. Tactical, he will leave 2 to 3 yards and maintain his ground, as it seems to be good, but I don't recommend you guys to use the contain button. It sucks as you can't win the ball unless the opponent moves into your defender. Using the contain button, the opponent will feel less pressure, and this makes it very easy for him to build up. It's like you're letting the game to pull your player's foot. It doesn't mind about spaces being left. The player focuses on the ball holder and locks to him. Containing doesn't anticipate the opponent's gameplay. So the recommended way to defend is to use the jockey system. How do we jockey? First of all, when your defender is in a jockey motion, when he's standing straight normally, and you press the jockey button, you will see that he will bend his knees, he will change his standing posture, lowering his center of gravity, as well as standing on his toes. This is to make movements very quick and easy, and if you release the jockey button, he will go back to his normal standing position. When jockeying, your defender will lock towards the ball direction, meaning he doesn't turn his back towards the ball, making it easy to defend. 2. He can change directions very easily and effective. Here he can react to any change of direction the opponent's player makes. 3. He can make interceptions of the ball very easily, because you have more control of your defender. But we have two jockey systems. One is the normal, or slow jockey. This is where you hold the L2 only and move the left analog. Your defender makes small quick movements. This is to maintain your ground, especially if your defender is near the ball holder. But in some cases you may fail to react to certain change of directions if the opponent's player is far away from your defender. And that's when you need the next system, the speed jockey, where you hold both the L2 plus the R2, the sprint button. Holding these two, your player will increase his speed of movements, and this most of the times, it's used to approach the ball holder. As speed jockeying, if the opponent attempts to change direction, you can react very fast, as there's some little distance between your defender and the opponent's ball holder. Here you need to cover up that space very quick, and at the same time being ready to react to his change of directions, and that's when you need the speed jockey. Though jockeying is good and recommended, but still there are certain situations where you don't need to use the jockey system at all, like when chasing up a player who's sprinting. Here if you jockey, your player won't match up that speed, and he will be left behind. So here you need to let go of the jockey button, sprint, and match the opponent's moving speed. 2. Closing up space. This is advanced, and if you're a beginner, I don't recommend you to use it at first place. Closing up space. Sometimes the opponent's ball holder will be far away from your defender. Here you need to sprint and close up that space, then speed jockey and approach. So as you know now how to jockey, and how it works, you need to learn how to defend one-on-one against your opponent. And that will be our next video. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something today. Defending one-on-one is the skill all pros mastered, and they first learned the basics once. Today it's about basic. So the first step is defender positioning. To be able to defend well one-on-one, you have to position your defender in a basic safe position. and the first way is to position your defender in front of the opponent's player. Here you can defend the opponent's way towards your goal. You have to cover the angle or lane towards your goal. By doing so you place your defender in front of that player having the ball, and more especially in or around the box. You have to imagine a straight line from the ball towards your goalkeeper, and position your defender in that line. This is the best way to position your defender inside your box. Here he can apply pressure and stop the opponent from progressing forward, and even block the shooting angle. This is how pros position their defenders inside the box, and if the opponent attempts to shoot, the ball will be blocked by your defender. Then leave a gap of 2 to 3 yards from the ball holder. You have to create a little bit of space from the opponent's player. A lot of players make this mistake. They move too close to the opponent's player. Here you're over-committing, and it's easy to beat your defender with simple tricks. That's what your opponent needs to use: skill moves. High up the pitch you can do this and get away with it. There's some distance towards your goal. You can be aggressive high up the pitch and try and win the ball as early as possible. But in final third, near your box, or inside your box, it's a different story. You have to leave this 2 to 3 yards from the opponent's player. Here it's not easy for the opponent to beat your defender with simple tricks or dribblings. You have to be patient with your positioning. Again, don't be too far away from the ball holder. You have to move closer to him, then position your defender very well. But how can you move your defender basically and maintain his position? That's when you need the jockey system. Though we looked at the jockey techniques, but we didn't explore more further in ways you can use it to move your defender. Defender movement is also so crucial and important. We have the speed jockey, used to approach the ball holder. The question is, why the speed jockey best when pressing the ball? It gives you more control of your defender. The defender moves very fast and precise. He can change directions very quick with a lot of ease and control. In this way you can react to any change of directions, or any slight movement the opponent makes with his player. Speed jockey is used to mirror the opponent's movements. If he goes right you follow, and if he goes left you follow also. The L2, or the slow jockey, this is the normal jockey technique used for two main important ways, and one is to maintain the defender's ground. The speed jockey is good because it's fast, but it's also easy for you to overcommit, as it covers a lot of ground in just a little time, though sometimes you need to just maintain a simple movement, especially in tight positions, where the opponent has a little space to work with. Here your defender have to move a little bit slow but reactive. The next way is to stabilize your defender. Sprinting, or fast jockeying. Your player tends to move fast, especially if you're sprinting trying to close up some space. Here if the opponent reads it and he try to change direction, as a defender if your defender moves fast and you try to react to opponent's movement, it seems to be hard because of his moving speed. So in these situations where you need to keep a close reaction to the opponent's movement, you have to use the slow jockey and stabilize your defender, especially if you're sprinting. In many cases, this will help defender to stop and change direction way much easier. To understand it more, take a look at these two quick examples. Here the opponent has much space down here. I anticipate that and I sprint to cover it up. As I'm sprinting, my player is in fast motion movement. The opponent reads it and he stops. I also realize it and hold the normal jockey or slow jockey to stabilize my defender. But look how it was easy for my defender to change his direction from a sprinting motion. Though I didn't win the ball, but I was able to stop a dangerous attack and win the ball later. The next example, here my opponent has this space down the wing and I think he want to drive into it, so I also sprint to catch up, but later he decide to slow down and change direction, so I also hold the slow jockey L2, it stabilized my defender. This way I was able to react to the opponent's movements. I approach and win the ball back. The best way to use the jockey system is to mixture them up in your controls. You have to learn a mixture of this system, where you know when to speed jockey, and when to use a slow jockey to maintain a better control of your defender. Sprinting to cover up space is also crucial in some scenarios, though jockeying is good, but even sometimes you need to sprint if there's a big space between your defender and the opponent's player. Sprint and close the space, then jockey and approach the opponent. Time will come when you just use them without thinking about it. For example here, I sprint to match the opponent's moving speed. After getting close I anticipate the opponent changing direction, so I hold L2 to stabilize my defender. After I speed jockey to follow his movement, I hold L2 again to stabilize my defender, because I knew my opponent is not continuing to the direction I'm anticipating. Again I go back to speed jockeying to follow his movement again. The opponent didn't move too far. He tried to change direction again. That's why I press L2 to stabilize again. I hold speed jockey and I apply pressure, ending up dispossessing him. Though jockeying is good and it can automatically tackle the ball if you get close to the opponent, but you need to defend more manually, and that's why you need to tackle. We have two types of tackles. One is the slide tackle. This is where you use the square button. The defender will slide and tackle the ball, but I don't recommend you guys using this type of tackle because it's very risky. The next is the standing tackle. This is where you press the circle button on your controller. Your defender will tackle the ball while standing. This is the common and the most useful one. It's not recommended to be spamming the tackle button all over the pitch. The moment you press the tackle button and you don't win the ball, you will be left in that motion, giving the opponent the opportunity to move without any challenge. So don't overuse the tackle button, especially around or inside the box. You have to be patient and wait for the best opportunities. If you want in-depth tutorial explaining how to tackle, check the link in the description. So what are the best opportunities where you need to press the tackle button? The best way to tackle is when the opponent makes a heavy touch. A heavy touch is when a player hits the ball away from his feet, and he have to move close again to the ball to be able to control it again. That's your opportunity as a defender to step in and tackle the ball. A player is more likely to make a heavy touch if he's in a sprinting motion, and even after or during when he's performing a skill move. For example here, the opponent makes a heavy touch trying to drive forward. Look how long it took for his player to regain control of the ball. So me as a defender, I sprint to cover up this pass to this player because I anticipated him passing, but opponent wanted to surprise me by driving forward. As I'm sprinting I spot a heavy touch, so I hold L2 to stabilize my defender, then I press the tackle button and win the ball. So in brief on how to defend one-on-one, approach the ball holder with the speed jockey to have a better control of your defender. If it needs to stabilize your defender, use the slow jockey in that case. Maintain a 2 to 3 yard space to avoid over-committing, but don't be too far away. You have to be close to the ball holder, 2 to 3 yards. You have to be patient and calm. You need to wait. Either the opponent will come into your defender, or wait for that heavy touch and step in to tackle the ball. You will not just be running to the ball holder and defend one-on-one. Your opponent won't be dribbling every time. There's a passing game you need to watch out. You need to cut passing lanes also. You cannot just be approaching the ball holder and always expect your opponent to hold the ball until you take it. He has many players on the pitch and he will pass the ball, so that's why you need to watch out his passing game. Cutting passing lanes is the first step, or mind game to begin with when learning how to anticipate, or reading your opponent the way he's playing. There are different types of passes we have to watch out, and let's begin with the first one. The short pass is the most used pass around and all over the pitch, and always there's a short distance between the passer and the ball receiver, so as the defender, you have to imagine the pass lane, from the ball holder to the ball receiver. After imagining this lane, then position your defender in that lane. When you position your defender like this and the opponent attempts to pass to that exact player, your defender will automatically take the ball. And as the guide on how to defend, we also need to know how you move your defender. Usually we use the speed jockey to cut passing lanes. Speed jockeying gives you full control over your defender in terms of movements, but still it depends on the distance between your defender and the passing lane. Sometimes you have to sprint to close up that distance, then position your defender in the passing lane for you to win the ball, so being aware of the distance is also crucial. You can even cut the passing lane, then after you press or approach the ball holder, but we shall look at this logic later. But to be able to cut these short passes you need to know one thing. You need to start thinking as your opponent. This is the first step of anticipation, so you need to take a look and see what player is free near the ball, and that's the player your opponent is most likely to pass to. But the ball moves up and down all over the pitch. It doesn't stay in one place, so you as the defender, you cannot control only one defender all over the pitch and be able to defend well. You have to switch players and defend with all your defenders. Here to be able to cut this passing lane I need to control this player, but the cursor is on this player, so I need to switch to this player, position him in the passing lane and win the ball. Since we are dealing with short passes for now, we need to switch to our nearest defenders near the ball, and the tool we need for player switching is the L1. This is the button for quick switch and it switches to the nearest defenders near the ball in that moment. But since this video is about basics, let's see how you need to set your controller for a better player switching, and let's explain only what you need to know and leave the rest. To be able to switch players as the way pros do it, you need a better controller setting. Some players set auto switching on automatic. This is wrong and not recommended. Every time the opponent passes, the game will switch for you. This gives you less control over your players. If you want to defend as the best players, you need to avoid automatic setting. So here I recommend you to use only on loose balls. This is the best according to how I experienced while defending with it. Here the game switches for you only if the opponent cross into your box, and if there's a loose ball, a 50-50 scenario. If you try manual, you will struggle to defend headers. Here you have to switch for yourself everything including crosses, and if you forget or delay, you may get punished. Then auto switching move assistance, here set it on none. That's better than high and low. We have this feature, next player switch indicator. If you set it on, you will see a faded icon, and this shows the player the game will select for you if you press the L1 quick switch, and it's always on the player near the ball area, and it can also be used as the second man press, but we shall look at this later. So this is how your setting should be. I personally don't like to set the next player switch indicator on. It has no problem and it's good. If you're a beginner, I recommend you to set it on, but for me I feel uncomfortable when it's on. So now you can switch players near the ball well, and you can defend short passes easily. You just need to put that into practice. Let's continue. Since the ball moves all over the pitch, it means it can move from a certain area and travel a long distance. Your opponent cannot just be passing using short passes. There are long distance passes, what we call long passes. There are different types of long passes: the ground long pass, the ground through pass, the aerial through pass. Any pass that needs the ball to move a long distance is a long pass. We have 3 ways to stop these passes, and the first step is to stop the pass immediately before the ball passer takes action. If your defender is near the ball holder, here just approach the ball holder and apply pressure on him. It's difficult for him to get a clear angle to release the ball perfectly. The opponent will either turn away and look for other options, or if he delays, you can tackle the ball and win it. So this is the first step, and it applies to all types of long passes. The other ways are little bit different. You have to select your furthest defender and defend the pass with him, and we looked at the L1. It selects the nearest defender near the ball, which means it can't work here. That's when we need to use the right stick switch. The right stick switch is where you use the right stick analog to change or select a defender you want to control. It gives you the opportunity to switch to almost any player you want, even if he's not near the ball. Still, you can switch to that player and control him, but it's not easy as you think. And also it's not hard as it looks like. So let us first explore more about the right stick switch, and after this you will have the full knowledge on how to use it, and how your controller setting should be like in order to switch effectively. First of all, we have 2 references of right stick switch, and beginning with the player relative. Using this setting, it means that any defender with the cursor, that is the point or center of switch, just imagine a circle, so that circle will act as your center point when you need to select another defender. Using these arrows illustrated very well, here you can select any defender you wish to control. For example, if you want to select this defender, you flick the right stick analog towards this direction, flick the analog and the cursor will appear on that defender, meaning that you have control over this defender in that moment. And if you want to select this defender down here, you flick the right stick analog in that direction of the player. So that's how the right stick switch works. So what about the ball relative? Here the ball is the center of the switch. For example here, if I flick the right stick analog in this way, if it's player relative, this player would have been selected, but ball relative, the ball is the center, so the player in that direction from the ball is this one, and when I flick it, that player is selected. The angle also matters. Ball relative is rarely used and a lot of pros don't even use it. They prefer player relative as well as me, so I recommend player relative. Beside that, on the side of types of right stick switch, one is the player rotation. Here instead of changing the cursor which indicates the defender you're controlling, it changes the faded indicator which indicates the next player to be selected. If you press L1, if I flick the right stick analog in this direction, the faded icon will switch to this player, and I can't control this player, so you flick the analog and move around the indicator, and if you press the L1, the cursor that indicates the player you're controlling, it will switch to that player. Flick the analog and after press L1 to control that player. The next thing, if you flick the analog and switch the indicator, then you take long to press L1 to control that player, it will automatically switch back. Also, this type of switch is rarely used, and so I don't recommend it. The next type is the adaptive. This feature was added on this FIFA 23. here you can skip the player in the direction of switch, and select the furthest player. Because here if I want to select this defender, and I flick the analog in that direction, these two players will interfere in the switch and one of them will be selected, but on adaptive, I hold the analog and move that indicator in the direction of that defender, and when I release it, the defender will be selected and am able to control him. So adaptive can work well to select the furthest defender and avoid interference, but it needs holding the analog for some time, and this will slow you down sometimes. That's why I don't recommend it. And so I recommend you guys to use classic on type, player relative on references. That's the settings you need to be able to switch players using the right stick analog effectively. Back on how to stop long passes, and beginning with direct long pass, this pass is directed towards where the ball receiver is positioned, so as the defender, you have to spot any distant opponent's free player, and also your defender near that free player. Here use the right stick switch and select that defender. After you have gained control over that defender, position him in the passing lane in order for him to intercept the pass. It's a right stick switch to that defender and close up the pass. Now things are becoming more manually than what you think. This is how pros mastered how to defend with high pressure. And it's not only positioning your defender in the passing lane, you can even position him near the ball receiver. Here if the opponent passes to him, you can react very quick and apply pressure to win the ball as quick as possible, but still, try to cut that passing lane if you can. Then next is the through pass, ground or aerial. Through pass needs the opponent to have any player who will receive the ball to run in behind or forward, and the opponent will either send that player manually to run, or it happens sometimes automatically when there's space left by one of your defenders. So when you spot this, you need to react immediately. If there's no any of your defender near the ball holder, don't think about pressing the ball. Here you have to track that runner, which means you have to react very fast. That moment you see that player running, right stick switch to your defender near that runner, or in the running path of that running player. Since those running players tend to be very fast than your defenders, you need to first sprint back and create a gap between your defender and that player. So after creating this gap, you need to jockey towards that running player. Here if the opponent attempts to pass, your defender will by all means win the ball back. Defending through pass is all about reacting very fast and track that running player. But the moment you delay you may suffer the consequences. Since some opponents are good and they can read that you're cutting that passing lane, so they take their time on the ball and look for another options around the pitch. Defending well on FIFA you need to be applying pressure in every angle, so sometimes you need to defend multiple options at the same time. The first principle is to know the opponent's options. We have multiple options on the pitch. As a game of football we always pass the ball. We have that space to drive into, so as the defender you need to spot these options and try your best to cover them and give the opponent hard time. As in this video we are focusing on the situation where you defend using only one defender that moment, then we shall later look on how to use multiple defenders. 2 is the confidence. A true defender is always confident in any choice he makes. We all make mistakes and learn from them. But you need to defend with confidence and trust in your abilities, like tackling that ball from the opponent's player. If you approach with a strong mentality to take the ball no matter what, 90% of the times you will win it. Then the third, we have to watch out for multiple options. There are times when the opponent have many options, like 2 open passing lanes, or like space and the open passing lane. Here is the defender. For example, when defending using one defender, we use the push and pull technique, or open and close technique, where you first analyze and notice the opponent's best option that moment. What is the first option your opponent is most likely to take first, before trying the second one? For example, space and pass. Most of the times a lot of players think about passing then dribbling, so that's the option you can first close, then after closing it, cover the space or approach the ball holder. Then the fourth, we have the reaction time, as the number one important rule of anticipation. In order to use the push and pull technique very effective, you need to react fast, where you make sure you react, or take action first before the opponent makes his move. How can we move our defender when performing push and pull or open and close technique? It's like pretense, or baiting trick. You pretend like you're committing to a certain direction, then you don't, drag back or pull back your defender. We shall explore about the push and pull tricks, but to be successful with it you need to be in control. FIFA as the game. The one in control of everything has high advantage over the other, so you need to be in control defense-wise, or your first one to take the action defense move before your opponent. here it forces the opponent to react to your actions, so here you can plan for him according to the options he had that moment. You can set traps like opening up space, and you immediately close it. The last principle is about mindset. Defending like this is a little bit of being aggressive and it's risky also, but all it's about risk versus reward. Defending like this will make your opponent feel like you're always steps ahead of him, but that's how most FIFA pros defend on the game. So now you have the ideas and the principles, let's look at some of the push and pull tricks, or proactive defending tricks, the aggressive tricks you need to learn in the early stages of anticipation. Cutting passing lane, then you approach the opponent ball holder. Here we're combining two, the pass logic and the one-on-one logic. Here you need to first notice the opponent's pass as early as possible, cut that pass first and then approach his ball holder. This is one of the tricks you should first master to improve your anticipation skills. The opponent feels like he have less time on the ball, for example here, as the opponent is running down the wing, and chasing him down and my player is catching up. So I anticipate the change of direction from the opponent because 70% will stop and turn away, so in my head I am scanning for his options if he turns, and I see this player, the pass will be open if the opponent turns, the opponent slows down, and I immediately position my defender in the passing lane, so in this position I know the opponent will not take the pass anymore, so I decide to approach the ball holder and challenge for the ball, and I ended up dispossessing the ball holder, though it was the opponent's throw-in. But see how I was moving my defender here, not overcommitting to any direction, but always very tight and close to him. You cover up space and approach the ball holder. How? As space is one of the options when playing a football game, so we consider it to be very important and crucial. So here if the opponent has two space options, you need to first pretend like you're committing to one, then you immediately turn and approach the ball holder. This is a baiting trick and very effective if done very well. For example here, as I switch to my defender in this position, the opponent has two space options to drive to, and he can go either way, but as we talked about, the first option which the opponent is most likely to take first, and I think this direction, sprinting forward, so we have to take our action first. We closed that space and positioned our defender very well, and remember we don't overcommit to it, then we approached the ball holder and win the ball back. All that came from confidence. One of the best pro defending tricks, you will realize that many pros use this trick a lot if you analyze their gameplay. Scanning the pitch is very crucial. If the opponent has two passing options that moment, as we always do, you push your defender to cut one passing lane, but you don't overcommit to it. You immediately pull him back and cut the other passing lane, because if you overcommit and cut one passing lane, some good opponents always vision two passing lanes during those situations. So he can take the other open pass if he notices you cutting the other. For example here, I mistakenly pulled out my full back because of right stick switch mistake. This opens up two good passing lanes, the short pass to the striker, and the through pass to the winger. Here I need to first cover the option which the opponent is most likely to take, and the most dangerous one first. As you see by yourself it's this through pass. I run back to cover it, but always remember we don't overcommit guys. I know my opponent is smart and he can't take that pass which am tracking, so I immediately decide to pull back and cut the short passing lane, which I ended up winning the ball back. The important principles, don't overcommit, and always prioritize the dangerous option first. The third is something very tricky and also effective in many cases. It's also a pro trick used to bait the opponent and outsmart his plans, so if the opponent has two options that moment, the space and the passing lane, here we trick the opponent into thinking that we're approaching his ball holder, since the opponent is also watching that free player. In his mind he thinks that if the opponent press my player, then I will pass the ball to my free teammate, so you approach the ball holder, but don't overcommit to that. You immediately pull your defender into the passing lane. For example here the opponent is building up from his half. As he passes to his full back I immediately select my winger and close up the gap. Here in this scenario, the opponent has this free player. So we just need to react to what I'm doing. If I commit and press his ball holder, then he will pass to that player. And if I just cut the passing lane, he will also react well and just dribble in front. So I outsmart him by pretending like I'm approaching his ball holder. This is to trick him into thinking that this pass is open. Then I immediately close the pass lane. Then we have this trick known as pounce, where you cut the through pass lane, then you approach and challenge the ball. So this trick normally works with through pass scenarios. If the opponent has the through pass opportunity to his running player, then as the defender you have to track that runner. Since a lot of players are familiar with this and they tend to read it, so they take their time on the ball and move forward. and even some drive forward by sprinting into the space you're leaving. So here as the smart defender, the trick normally works with the last defender when he's not too far away from the ball holder. So yes, you track this run and convince your opponent that the through pass is not an easy opportunity, but you don't overcommit to it. You immediately approach the ball holder, and this really surprises a lot of opponents. For example here, the opponent passes to his player and trigger his striker to run forward. So here I first track this run and stop the through pass opportunity, but I know my opponent is also good. He will read that and keep holding the ball for other options, but I didn't commit on tracking the runner. I run a little bit backwards to sell my bait, then I immediately approach his ball holder and win the ball. These tricks, yes, are good and effective, but remember it differs on the type of the opponent you are matching against. Some opponents are not too smart as the way you think, so you need to study the opponent's playstyle and understand his skill levels. Some of FIFA strategies needs time to be mastered. You only need to trust the learning process and stick with it. By the time it will become second nature, and you need to naturally feel what you're doing rather than thinking about them. Hope you learned something today. Thanks for watching.